So here to talk about some of those changes in this real estate market is my partner and principal in PowerHouse and NorthStar, Mr. Jerry Hannan.
You guys have been around me for a few years, so even longer than others, know that change is probably my favorite topic. It really is, and it really, to me, it's extremely exciting. One of my mentors in the past is a guy named Jim Rohn, and this guy has, well, back then I had all his cassettes. Now I can't figure out how to play his cassettes. No one plays cassettes anymore. He talks about change. Jim Rohn, my favorite quote from Jim Rohn is, "For things to change, you've got to change." When I took that to heart a few years ago, and I took responsibility for myself changing, that's when everything changed for me. That's when my life changed. That's when everything started happening. That's when my life turned around. We all agree that change is critical, but what really needs changing? Anybody?
We.
Us, okay? The market is changing, right? Mel just talked about the market changing. Do we have any effect? Do I, as an individual, as Liddell, have any effect on the market? Can you change the market, Liddell? No. Prices are changing, right? Do we have, seriously, any effect on prices? We don't. Do we have any effect on interest rates? No. Absolutely not. We don't. But they are changing. Regardless of our activities or our input or anything like that, or our effect, they're changing anyway. Do we have any effect on lending practices? Not at all. The lending industry is changing. Do we have any effect on the whole selling or buying process? We're in the real estate business. Do we have an effect on that process? The process is pretty much the way it is. Right? Everybody agree to that?
Yeah.
So what needs to change is me. For things to change, I've got to change. When we, well, here at PowerHouse and NorthStar, you guys know that we teach and we espouse, and that's a big word, look it up, that it's totally our personal responsibility to create a life, and by life I mean, that includes my business, that is profitable, fun, fulfilling, exciting. 100% responsibility for us as individuals and together as a group and as a team. We must accept that responsibility. When we do, anything and everything can happen. When we don't, anything and everything can happen also, but we're not going to have any control over it. If we want some control over what happens and what will happen, we must accept responsibility for that. Before anything can change, though, we've got to accept what is exactly the way it is. Remember, I used to say, you is where you is. That's it. We are where we are. It is what it is. We got to accept that. Unless and until we accept everything exactly the way it is, we can't transform anything. Remember my saying, acceptance equals transformation. You've got to have complete acceptance first for any kind of transformation or change to happen. Then, once we have acceptance, we can adapt to the conditions of the market. The interest rates, the prices, the lending practices, every part of the process of buying and selling, we can adapt to that once we've accepted exactly where we are right now. And once we adapt to it, we can profit from the conditions exactly the way they are, or we can starve as a result of it. I used to belong to a Century 21, and I remember when the early 90s, I got into the business 1990, and I used to think it was my fault. The day I got into the business, the market started crashing. I thought it was me. They blamed me, I'm telling you. There were articles and everything, pictures. So, but I remember the people, there were 75 people in the Century 21 office, and a lot of these people were making really big incomes, 1988, 1989, huge incomes. All they had to do was show up at the office and take orders. That's all they had to do. They didn't have to really go to work. Somehow, I was lucky enough, something hit me in the head and said, if you're going to make it in this business, you've got to go out and talk to people. You know how I say all the time, this business is really easy. Talk to lots of people, keep getting better at that. I knew that instinctively from the beginning I needed to prospect. So every year as the market started diving, my business grew. But some of these people that were making six-figure incomes, and back then, in the late 80s, early 90s, if you were making a six-figure income in real estate, you were doing really, really well. But these people were getting out of the business in droves, They didn't change. They came to the office and set up their desk and put their pencils and papers down and looked at the phone and hoped that it would ring so that they could take an order. Because that's the way it was. The market changed, they didn't. They didn't look for the business. So, all growth, once we accept it, then we can do the change. All growth stems from change, and we're talking about growing. Anybody in here rents an apartment? Okay. Here's growth and here's change. If you rent an apartment, you need to buy a house. Anybody in here own a house? Everybody. If you own a house, you need to buy a fourplex. Anybody in here own a fourplex? A couple people. If you own a fourplex, you got to buy a strip mall. Anybody in here own a strip mall? Or something like it? Well, we all do. Okay, we do. If you own a strip mall, you've got to be thinking about doing a commercial development, and maybe a mixed-use development. You've got to think big. Donald Trump said, you're going to think anyway. Why not think big? We have got to be able to walk away from where we are to wherever we want to be. So that's where change comes in, that's where growth comes in, that's where getting uncomfortable comes in. Because don't kid yourselves about it. Change is uncomfortable, growth is uncomfortable. It hurts, but all things are hard until they're easy. And everything eventually gets easy, it is. So how are things different right now in the market? Mel touched on a few things ago, a little while ago, a few things in the market. If you were in the business a couple of years ago, what was it like working with a buyer? When there was nothing on the market, when there was a few properties on the market, but they were getting 30, 40, 50 offers on these properties. Was it frustrating to work with a buyer? It was impossible. What was it like to have a listing? It was gold. It's money in the bank to have a listing back then. Actually, in every market, if you control the listings, you control the market. It's always a good idea to be a listing agent. Not always a good idea to be a buyer's agent. But today, if you're representing a buyer, is it easier?
Yes.
Absolutely, it's easier. Is there a little more inventory out there? Are they on the market for a little longer? Are they having multiple offers? Very rarely these days. I mean, even deals that we think are deals, in our expert opinion, we think are deals, we can't understand it. They're on the market 45 days, they're not selling. You know, things have changed. So buyers are different, sellers are different. The concept is still the same. I don't care where the market is. Prices could be here, prices could be there, interest rates here, interest rates there, or flat. It doesn't matter. People that know how to make money in this business. If you know what you're doing, there's always a good opportunity in real estate. If you don't know what you're doing, you're always going to screw it up. So it's key and it's critical that we know. Here at NorthStar and PowerHouse, it's kind of important to us and for us that everybody does know. It's really important. So the concept's the same. Buy something at a certain price, sell it at a higher price. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You know, add value, sell it at a higher price. If the market prices are here, if we buy here, we're fine. If the market prices are here, if we buy here, we're fine. Interest rates, it doesn't really matter. If you're the only house on the market and you're the best price house, you have a pretty good chance of selling. You know, if there's 1 million houses on the market and you're the best price house on the market, you have a pretty good chance of selling. The concepts are the same, they don't change.